back with another episode of the Athlete Connection. Special guest this week, Whitney Jones, very distinguished former Inland Empire. Well, I guess you're from Inland Empire, right? That still counts.
Yes, the IE for
Yeah, there
sure.
you go. Inland Empire product, Whitney Jones. But, you know, again, we were just talking before we started getting on air, but really excited to hear your story because you're one of the few people that have a unique story to have that athletic experience, but now you're on the coaching side of it. So really interested in obviously getting your perspective and hearing what your journey was and how that was like. But I just want to read a little bit of these accolades as I'm looking on the Ohio State website here. 4-year letter winner at the University of Washington, 2-time Pac-12 All Academic Performer, All Pac-12 Honorable Mention. You got your master's degree from Tulsa, and obviously you worked your way up through the coaching ranks. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here and see you guys. It's been a minute, but you never forget where you came from and the people that have influenced you along the way. So
You
I'm happy
know,
to be here.
what those accolades aren't going to say is that she was grinding at, what was it, middle school? You were like the first athlete that I've ever recorded training. You
Yes,
and Vince
yes.
Brown. You guys were the first two athletes as a speed strength coach specialist. You two were the first, and you were grinding at middle school. So that's one thing that the accolades will not let you know. That's crazy.
And I
Most
mean, just
definitely.
to add on to that, Rick, because obviously I came onto the scene a little bit after when I was done playing or obviously transition or whatever. But like, I remember you being one of the most dedicated, like, athletes that knew what you wanted to do, where you wanted to go, what you had to do. And you're like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to get this work. And you did. And obviously, your successes paid off because you put in the work. So that's great to see.
Well, most definitely. And I think too, being a pitcher and a position player and a hitter growing up, there was no excuses. It wasn't like, oh, well, I had a high school game today and I pitched, so I'm not going to go train. I was like, all right, let's get some dinner and let's head where we need to go to keep training. And so, I attribute a lot of that to the coaches I've been around, but also just the household that I was raised in. It was, like, this is who you're going to be. This is where you're trying to go. And this is the work you got to put in to get there. And so I think those characteristics have helped drive where I'm at today for sure.
Hey, so what you said something there, and I'm going to go a little bit of a different route, just a little bit, but I do want to focus on your journey, but explain a little bit about the household, because I know both your mom and your pops, and we're going to get on later episodes. We're going to touch on parents, but give us a little bit of brief introduction on your household that you just mentioned and how that influenced who you are today.
Yeah, I very much, I would say, grew up in like a blue collar household. My dad played baseball growing up, and my mom has always been into fitness and wellness and health. And, we sat at dinner table every night too. So I just think there's pieces of how I was raised, and like, you got to work for the things that you want. I mean, growing up, my grandma watched us a lot while my mom was going back to school to get her master's degree. So we just constantly saw our parents working towards the things that were going to help give us a better future and showing us what that looked like, and knowing that, you know, we're going to stay a tight knit family, but that might look like, dad working late one night. It might look like mom not getting home later that one night. So just, I saw growing up, like, my family working, my parents working really hard to provide everything that we needed, and then seeing the rest of my family come together to make sure that we were supported in having everything that we needed. And, you know, we saw our parents working hard, but our parents we never felt that. We just saw them always working hard and providing everything that we needed to achieve our dreams. So just trying to position ourselves to do the same thing for our families.
So basically, to sum it all up, they taught you at a young age, no excuses, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Find a way to find a way. Always. Always.
I like that.
Yes.
So like, how do you obviously that shape, that's really kind of the foundation of, your support system and where you kind of got your start off. But like, how do you think, or how big of an influence do you think that is or was looking back on, your journey now?
I would say it's everything. I mean, you think about now the transfer portal and how everyone has options. Everyone can, if you're not happy, of course you can go somewhere else. And I think every story and every situation is unique in itself. But I look back at my personal story, and I look back, like, things weren't always great for me during my career. I hit some hard points and some rough patches where it was like, okay, what are you going to do next? And I think that's where my faith kicked in. And that's where also seeing a greater purpose and where I was at and what I was doing. And I think back to after my sophomore year, like maybe I had a couple thoughts here and there to transfer, but if I didn't, and I didn't stick that out and I didn't see all the other great things going on in my life, like I maybe wouldn't have played every game my junior year at the World Series. And I wouldn't have like had the opportunity to go to the University of Tulsa and do an internship. So I look back and I'm like, man, sticking those hard times out provided opportunities that came after that, but also like just the character piece of it. It showed me who I was and what I could get through. And I just think that my path would be a lot different if I didn't stick those times out and stay where I was at. So it's definitely grounded me in like who I am and those character traits for sure.
So you said some huge softballs right there, right? So, or some huge lobs. Is that a softball term? I don't know. But anyways, all right. So touching on something a little, I know we can go extensively on it because now I have a daughter, right? Was there a difference? Because you talked about the grind, the hardships that you had. Was there, could you see, because you were at UW, right? So could you see the differences, or was there differences being a female athlete? Were you able to like notice or witness some things that probably made your hardships a little bit different than say a male athlete's perspective? Or were you able to like analyze that now looking back on that?
I would say looking back on it now, I mean, there's a lot more opportunities. Can you see me? Okay, sorry, my headphone. Um, there's way more opportunities for us to play at the next level now than there were when I was playing. And I think about, I was very, during my career, I knew like my senior year, I was going to go back to the University of Tulsa and be a graduate assistant and go that strength and conditioning path after. But now I see these opportunities to play pro and continue to develop and grow after college. I'm like, man, I look back at it now, I'm like, it would kind of be cool to keep like to have seen where my career could have gone after college as well, knowing the things I know now. But then again, you're like, everything happens for a reason and my path is my path and I'm where I'm at now. But it's to look back on it now, I'm like, I used to always be like, man, like all these football players, yeah, they're like talking about going pro. Yeah, there's just so many more opportunities for them than there are for women. And so it's like, I was just like, yeah, cool. Like, it just always felt like there were just way more opportunities for them to continue to play the game and like have that, that financial support to continue their profession as well. Whereas us females maybe didn't have those opportunities, but they're continuing to grow. And I think it's continuing to move in the right direction. And it's better now than it was when I was graduating. So I think we're on the right track and softball's continuing to grow. I mean, you saw the double decker now at the Women's College World Series. So I think our sport's continuing to grow and those opportunities are opening up for sure.
Do you think that like influenced kind of your plan, right? Your roadmap. You, like you said, you knew you wanted to go and get your master's in coaching and do all those things, but knowing that road to go pro, obviously maybe it wasn't as easy or maybe just not as accessible. Like, do you think that helped shape, your direction definitively, where you knew you had to focus on the classroom to do those things because, there was no NFL or there was no Major League Softball, like, do you think that kind of influenced how you went about going through college and obviously that roadmap?
I definitely say that was a factor. Also, during that period where I was kind of going through some tough things during my career, I was also introduced to I had 5 strength coaches in 4 years as a sophomore at Washington. And my junior year, my strength coach, his name is Keith Belt, and he had a huge impact on me. And he actually connected me with some people at the University of Tulsa. So I think there were just a lot of things that were lining up for me to go in that direction at that time too. So I was just excited. I wanted to get into that profession. I had great people around me. And so it just felt like that was kind of the direction I was excited to move forward with. So.
I think everybody's journey is a little bit different, right? We
Mm-hmm.
we we all agree on that. I know for me personally, strength and conditioning was huge, especially when you meet those coaches, like good and bad. When you meet those coaches, they help project you on your next path.
Absolutely.
Um, Looking back on everything, like looking at, your transition from, softball, high school to college, the recruiting process, then, that in between, because I know all of us have like, what do I want to do in life? Like, what's going on? Um, what what exactly would you change anything? Or we just spoke about, hey, there it's a reason for everything, but if there was something, would you change it, or would you kind of like navigate a little bit different if this Whitney could talk to that Whitney back then?
I would I believe the strength and conditioning piece actually I would go back and do that all over again and absolutely keep doing that. That piece was huge for me transitioning into college. I mean, and not only from the physical standpoint, but from the mental standpoint, like that mentality I had going into college. It was like I wasn't phased by getting up at 6 a.m. and working out. I wasn't phased by lifting 4 days a week. Like that mentality, like a lot of that stuff can wear on your body. And the more durable you are physically, the more durable you are mentally. And so going in and having that foundation and that base, it just gave me so much confidence. And so I would go back and absolutely do that all over again. I'm a very like hardworking, like let's go, let's get after it, discipline. Like, so I took softball so seriously growing up. Like it was all about like getting to the next level. I wanted to win a national championship. So if I could go back and do it all over again, I enjoyed the process, but I would have had even more fun doing it and like enjoying, like not having that stress of like, oh, it's all about this. And oh, if your coach is there, you better perform. And oh, if you didn't perform, coach doesn't want you anymore. Like all those little pieces of like worrying about things that probably weren't as important as I made them. I would go back and just like keep it a little more light, keep it a little more light for sure.
I like that you said that. I mean, that's kind of what we've spoken about, and some of the other guests have alluded to. It's like, hindsight's 2020, right? When you're in it, and that's the only thing that you can focus on. But I mean, if you can take that second to kind of pause and look outside of things, gain a little bit more perspective, you find that you can enjoy your experience a little bit better and really make better or even different decisions. I think that a couple of the previous guests were kind of echoing the same sentiment that you had. But
Well, yeah, especially, I mean, being a coach now, you're like, you want people that love the game and you want that to be like visible that they love the game and they're going to be able, because I mean, the hardest part at the next level is the daily. I mean, you're literally asking them to show up day in and day out and give to the sport. And so you have to love playing the game and showing up every day. So
I'm glad you said that. And real quick, I just want to ask, before we get into, the coaching side of things, because I definitely want you to share some perspective there. But what's something or a couple of things that you experienced that you were like, man, I had no idea it was going to be like this, or I was not expecting that at all?
I would just say the length of a season. I mean, going into my freshman year, and of course, you play like around 55 games in the regular season, and then hitting that postseason stretch, I was like, wow, like my body started feeling it a little bit towards the end of the season. So just the grind of the amount of volume you play throughout the season, definitely. And then, of course, just balancing the academic piece. That first quarter of traveling, that was another piece that I had to get through my freshman year, but
Just didn't know what was coming, right?
didn't know what was coming. Might have switched my my intended major pretty quickly there my freshman
Yeah,
year, but
so it's funny you say that because that's the exact same thing I did. I was gonna go in. I was like, I'm gonna be a kines major. This is what I want to do. I'm gonna go the physical trainer route, still be involved with the sport. We checked in August, playing for a full 2 months. School didn't start till the end of September, right when season started. I think the first week of school, we were on the road. I got back. I had so much biology homework and everything else. I was like, yo, this is not it.
no, not at all. No, for
This
sure.
is
And you're now talking to an English major right here. So, but going from that, you're one of the fun. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but you're one of the funnest athletes that I ever had to train. Had the privilege to train. We had the privilege of training because your dedication, your hard work, and the ability, what we just touched on, to keep it fun, right? It used to be, I tell the athletes, we do this so you're not surprised in college. And I think you are a poster child of that because you weren't surprised. You just said that, right? Now, as we transition, because we are always growing in life, now, one of the things that I know I say is that I'm doing this now because I want you guys to take less off your plate in college so you can keep your actual sport fun, because as you get to that next level, we talked about this, it becomes quote unquote less fun and more of a business, right?
hmm
So
hmm
now you as a coach, what do you do to keep it fun, or what advice do you have for your athletes who's just experiencing, freshman year, oh my gosh, and now they're understanding like, oh shoot, like this is different from when they were recruiting me. Now I'm like, I signed and now I'm here and now they're kind of mean, like what do you do at that as from a coaching perspective now?
I would say, going into it, especially you go through these phases throughout your career. Like you talk about high school, like you're into high school, you're the hot shot, and then you go into college and you're like, okay, now I'm like I'm back to being a freshman again and I have so much to learn and there's so much in front of me and everyone's good. And so you're like, okay, like I went from being like maybe the best player to now I'm like one of, 20, 22 other really great players. And so and then you're trying to figure out where are my classes at, like what's my schedule, how do I stay on top of everything. So you have so many pieces that you're trying to balance going into it, and as a coach you're trying to support them through that, and I think you try and keep things fun by giving them variety. I mean, I know when I used to show up to train, like it wasn't the same thing every time I showed up to train with you guys growing up. It was like, okay, you can achieve the same means through different ways, through different avenues. And when you keep things fun and exciting and there's variety around it, they're like, okay, because if you show up and do the same thing every single day, it's so boring, And so I know for me, I'm like, okay, what are our objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? And how can we like mix different things in there with accomplishing the same thing? And I think a big piece too with keeping it fun and keeping it light for them is creating that line of communication where they know they can come talk to you. They can know that like it's not just always you talking at them, but it's like a conversation between the two of you. How are you feeling today? What's going on today? Like, okay, you got this going on. Cool. Let me help you get through that. First, like not really seeing where somebody's at during the day and you're like talking at them and you like don't even realize like maybe there's something going on with their family that you had no idea. So I think it's just continuing to build that relationship, build that connection. Like they can come to you like, hey coach, like this is going on. Okay, you can have that conversation with them. They can move on knowing that you know where they're at that day. And all you're asking them to give is 100% of what they have right now to the team. And just be here, lose yourself with your teammates, and let's get through this day and make it the best that we can. Because things come up in life, and sometimes you don't know what the athlete's going through. So I think them being able to feel comfortable approaching you and talking to you is very important, especially as a freshman, because there's so many things.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off, but
no,
you just touched on something. So how do you as a coach now navigate through communication? Because I mean, communication is key. I mean, that's something that has gotten better over the decades between coach and athlete. Um, Now, we're talking about Title IX. We're talking about all these things that are influencing the world, like that. Now our eyes are opening up, right? Communication is key. How do you navigate between, hey, I'm the coach. I see that you're going through this. We still have to grind, though. How do you navigate between the two? Am I making sense? I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like we can't take days off. We can't get days back either. So I know you got this going on, but we're moving in a certain direction as a team, and we need this from you today at the same. And so it's being demanding, but also understanding where they're at. So I think it's just meeting them in that middle point and trying to push them through that and get that little extra bit out of them and focus their mind on maybe what's important right now. Like, okay, we got this going on right now. Let's put all of our attention there. Like versus, oh, I got 2 exams going on, or oh, I got this, or oh, I got that. Like, let's focus on what's most important right now and let's be present. That's where, um, you know, I tend to ask a lot of questions. Like, I give me some feedback. What are you feeling? Where are you at? How's your mental today? Like, I tend to ask some questions just to see where they're at. But also, you can feel body language. You can see, expressions, and just trying to keep them present with what we're trying to do as a team and what we're trying to accomplish in that moment.
That's great. And I mean, what's that approach, or take that same question from a recruiting standpoint, right? Like, how's that communication like with the parents or with your up and coming recruits when you're, talking with them about your program, and really you're selling your program to ultimately get them to choose your program? Like, how's that communication between athlete and parent?
I would say, you let them know when they're in your hands, like we're gonna love them up and we're gonna treat them like they were our own children. And sometimes love isn't always the easiest conversation, and just letting them know we're gonna have open, honest conversations with them, but we're gonna expect a lot of them, but we're also gonna support them throughout that process. and treat them like they were our own. So I think that's the biggest piece. And, you want them to feel like they're in a safe environment every single day. Like that's the only way someone's going to thrive is if they feel like they're supported, they can authentically be themselves. So I think that's where you just spend a lot of time getting to know and develop those relationships, and you approach each person a little bit differently. I mean, some people you can't call them out in front of a whole team. Some people need that. So it's just and me, I've been here for about a month and a half, almost 2 months. And so I'm in that phase right now of continuing to build those relationships. But also you got to keep everybody on track with buying into the direction that the collective whole is going, And so I think that's where kind of I'm at right now in that process.
That's great. I mean, that's a good advice, good approach to have. Um, what are some of the things that you look for when you're out scouting and you ultimately kind of like, or this is an athlete, this is a person that I think will be appropriate or fit well within our program, within our system? Like, what are some of those things that are ideal in your eyes when you're recruiting for some of the listeners that are, potentially trying to get recruited or even just trying to get on someone's radar?
We touched on this a little bit earlier, but over the years, one thing that stood out to me is like someone who loves the game. And that being visible, that you just enjoy playing the game. That's number one. Like I want somebody who's going to enjoy showing up every day. Like we're in our fall season right now and we play our last games this weekend, but then we're not going to play again until February. So like you can't just be a gamer. Like you have to enjoy the grind of getting better every day. And if you're just someone who's going to show up and I'll get it done in the game. Well, what's every other day going to look like for training when we're not playing? And so like someone who loves the game and loves the process and wants to continue to learn and get better. I think that's one of the important pieces. And then of course with my strength and conditioning background and love, like I want efficient, good athletic movers. Like that's one thing, you look for is like, how do they move? Do they move well? Are they athletic? Do you see some of that quick twitch in how they move and that explosiveness? Because those are some of the things you can get there. But if someone already has that foundation, you're like, okay, this is a great starting point for us to continue to build off of. Because the more you have to quote unquote change or fix, there's also a change or fix in someone's mentality going through that process. And so sometimes when you feel like you have to, shift what somebody does in a big way, you're also taking away a little bit of their confidence throughout that process of like, well, is what I already do not good enough, or like why? So there's that piece too, where it's like, if you can get some really good, efficient, athletic, explosive movers, like you're going to be in a good spot. Especially too, I know I mentioned some like the grind of my freshman year, but knock on wood, I never had any major injuries like up until this day. And I think having that good, strong foundation and how I moved definitely played a part in that, like I'm pretty strong and pretty stable, like those pieces. And I've had great coaching. So that definitely, I think, played a piece in the minimal amount of injuries.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
mean,
is tendonitis really an injury?
not
It's
really.
just
I got
exactly.
sometimes in the elbow, but it is. I mean, the cool thing is like you're one of the few female athletes that I've ever got to work out with, especially post. And I was like, man, she pushes me. All right, let's go. Which
I
is
love
really
that.
cool. So
Hey, facts, because I was not going to let her out deadlift me or out back
like,
squat me.
oh,
I'm telling
okay,
you
this
right
is
now.
we're going real game. We're
Right
going real
now.
game today. Hey, so real quick, and I like to have fun with this, right? So I know we talked about this when a little bit in college, the differences between that recruitment, when they came to parents' house and they were a little bit different, and then you go over to UW's like, whoa, wow, where did this come from, right? Now being experienced in the recruiting process, things like that. Say you have that athlete that man legit. Hey, say she's my daughter, right? So what
I
would
like
you
what you did there,
so
Ray. I like
so
what you
yeah,
did there.
exactly,
Right.
right? So say my daughter has some fast twitch motions, right? Oh, she probably will. But say she's like, hey, okay, I'm on it, right? Softball in the country. Now, what have you learned from your recruiting process, good and bad, that you would probably navigate in telling her, recruiting her to the Ohio, you know? What would you say? What you know, the truths, anything, you know, how would it be different?
On top of being a great mover, being explosive, all those things, there's also the skill piece to softball. And so how does what you do translate on the field as well? So, you know, you're evaluating their defensive ability, their arm strength, their ability to hit for power, their ability to put balls in play. And I think that that's a piece you look for as well. You're like, okay, what do you do really well? And then do you own those strengths within the game as well? You know, if you're somebody who you're going to be a slapper, you're going to be a speedster, and your job is to put balls in play and put pressure on the defense. Is that what you're doing every time the coach shows up to watch you play? If you're somebody who is going to hit for power, like, is that what's showing up on the field when you're being evaluated? So I think too, just understanding what your makeup is as a player and then owning that. And then when you're being evaluated, like those are the skills you're trying to showcase. Because I mean, of course, my primary like lens is offensively. And so you're looking like, okay, everyone doesn't have to be the same offensively, but how do you own your strengths and how does that fit the puzzle of our whole offense? And so, you know, when you're looking at what does someone do really well, you want to see those things show up in the game consistently. I hope that answered, or
No,
that kind of fit.
I think
Was
that
the
was a
direction
great
we were going.
answer. Yeah, no, that was great. So we'll wrap up real quick, but I just have one question that's been egging me the longest time. But like, why is it? And I've noticed that in all women's sports, female sports, there's always that sort of cheer component, right? Like women's volleyball, softball, like you always have to be up cheering, rooting on your teammates. And if it's not, it's like perceived as you're not in it. Like, why do you think that is? And why is that maybe received positively or negatively? Because you don't see that in, you know, male sports. You know what I mean?
I would say, I mean, with my background and where I've been and the things that I've found help teams be successful, I think the dugout component is an it factor, um, especially in our sport. Like people rant and rave how exciting our sport is. And I think one of the pieces that makes it exciting is, you know, you celebrate your teammate's success. And like that's one of the pieces that does keep a dugout going is, you know, if you're always waiting for something good to happen to celebrate, then it's like this constant roller coaster if you're always reacting to success. But if you can have a consistent dugout who's constantly in it every single pitch, you guys are fighting together. It's a 22, 23 on one mentality of like everybody, I'm with you. Like if you win, I win, we win. We're all winning together. And that's that team component that I think comes from the dugout. It's not this like, oh, I'm not playing today. Let me just sit here and watch what like because
Right.
your number could get called at any moment. And the more you're present with your team, you're locked into what's going on. When coach calls you off the bench, you're ready to step in and execute for the team. And I think it just keeps that team component together throughout a game. And it's fun. I mean, it's fun to watch. It makes it
Right.
exciting. It inspires the little girls that are in the stands to want to be that one day.
And be
Um,
engaged.
And
yeah,
and
absolutely. You know, I had the privilege to coach this Bates, and like that's a lot of people's like favorite
Yeah,
like
she's a
athlete.
boss.
Yeah, and you look at it and you're like, people see her enjoying the game and having fun playing the game, and that's
Right.
of course she's a one of the best shortstops in the game, but also just her love for the game is
Yeah.
visible. So
I mean, you just actually put a portrait on baseball versus softball. Why softball is more
It's fun, more fun than
no
baseball.
shade, no shade.
Yeah, right.
It's like that's why
Yeah,
it's so
right.
intense. That's why softball's
Cool.
so
Well,
intense.
I'm gonna wrap. I know Whitney, you got some recruits coming in, and I got to run, and I know Ray, you got stuff to do. But wanted to again thank you again for taking the time and hopping on, and for everyone listening, definitely don't forget to like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions, want to maybe get in contact with Whitney, reach out to us first, so you guys aren't blowing up her DMs at Tri Elements Fitness, and we'll kind of hopefully filter those questions. But again, thank you, Whitney, for everything that you've done and hopping on with us this morning.
great to see you guys. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll be out in Cali here in a few weeks. So
Let's do it. We got to get
Let's
you a
go
Tri
with it.
Elements. We got to get you a T. Let's get
Let's
it.
go with
most definitely. All right. Good seeing
bring
y'all.
some
All
swag.
right, see you guys.
Take care.